All right, everyone, welcome back to another text-based, discussion-based, specs-based, opinion-based video. And what are we going to be talking about here today? Well, if you saw the title of the video, y'all know what we're talking about. We're doing the complete rundown and comparison for the new iPhone 14, the iPhone 14 Plus, the iPhone 14 Pro, and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Alright? So we're going to run through everything you guys and gals need to know here today. I'm going to give my overall thoughts and opinions on it and overall recommendations. And as always, all affiliated and featured and buy links will be available down below in the video description, along with my favorite content creators that covered the devices that we're getting ready to talk about. I love shouting out really good content creators on YouTube, so I will have affiliated links, featured links, and content creator links all available down below in the video description. So as always, the video description will be like a one-stop shop for you guys and gals, and you should be good to go. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. Let's get into talking about these devices. Let's go. And up first, I want to talk about the smaller devices. And the whole reason why I have the iPhone 11 pulled up alongside the 14 and the 14 Pro is because if you look at the Apple event, the iPhone 11 in terms of performance is the baseline performance level that Apple used to compare all their other devices to. Thus, meaning that the iPhone 11, if you have it here today, is still an overall really good device. If it's good enough for Apple to use as a baseline performance device, it should be good enough for you. And as you guys and gals will see throughout this video, these devices, in terms of comparing them to the iPhone 11, are very similar, but there are some very big differences and key changes, but it is very similar overall. So without further ado, let's jump into this comparison here. And we are using gsmarena.com. I always love to use GSM Arena, but pay no attention to the pricing in terms of the new 14s, because we're going to go to the Apple official site to show y'all the pricing. And as always, once the pricing gets good and becomes available from third-party retailers that I can recommend, like Amazon and eBay, I'll put those links down below in the video description as well. As a matter of fact, I probably won't publish this video until everything that I want to use for this video is publicly available. Alright, so y'all probably won't see this video get published for a long time because I still gotta wait for the iPhone 14 Pro, iPhone 14 Plus to become publicly available. And not to mention, I have to wait for it to go on sale and then get posted to places like Amazon and eBay. So y'all probably won't see this video get published for a long time. But let's get it in. I felt like I needed to make a video today. I was feeling kind of down. Y'all know making videos make me feel better. So let's get it in, and hopefully this comparison video, discussion-based video, helps somebody out. So let's dive straight in. Now, let's talk about the networks and connectivity first, because there are some big changes here. Now, whether you're deciding to go with upgrading to the iPhone 11, iPhone 14, or iPhone 14 Pro, these devices are going to be available across all of the major carriers. Now, one difference you want to keep in mind is that the iPhone 11 is 4G LTE only. Okay, if you want to upgrade to a newer iPhone and you want 5G, then you're looking at the 14 and the 14 Pro, at least when we talk about this size of device. But all of these devices should support and will support 4G LTE with no problems. Now, if you're looking at 5G and you're on Verizon, you do have to get the Verizon specific 5G variant. Okay, but if you're on any other carrier aside from Verizon, it really doesn't matter which device you go with in terms of carrier coverage and connectivity, because you should be good to go. Okay? Now, that covers the carrier and the coverage and the bands. Let's move on to another important thing, and this might be a big thing, especially for my international viewers. The newer iPhone 14s all come with eSIM. eSIM is an embedded SIM card embedded onto the motherboard of the phone itself, and then you digitally flash the SIM card information to the embedded SIM. Alright? So here in the US, in the States, we are going to have eSIM only iPhone 14s. Now, abroad or internationally, you guys still will have the traditional eSIM and the traditional nano SIM card slot. iPhones do not have any type of expandability. They never have. Okay? But that's one thing in terms of carrier and coverage that I wanted to point out. If you're in the States, you're going to get eSIM only. Now with the eSIM, okay, you can support up to 8 eSIMs on your device and have 2 active eSIMs at a time. So what does that mean? That means you can have up to 8 numbers connected to your iPhone and have 2 active numbers running at a time. Okay? But that does mean that you will have to jump through a few extra hoops in terms of getting your eSIMs activated depending on your carrier. Okay? So this would probably be the first time ever that I would just recommend that everybody go with an international variant. Okay? Because although it might not have full 5G coverage, okay, it will still give you really solid 4G LTE, and you get the best of both worlds because you have the physical nano SIM and you still have access to the eSIM. So not only do you get the 8 phone numbers with 2 active phone numbers, but you also get that additional physical SIM for another phone number. So that actually gives you up to 9. Keep in mind you can only use 2 simultaneously, but you can have up to 9 phone numbers connected to your device, the newer 14s, with that physical active SIM. And if you want to switch carriers, it's less of a headache because you just do the traditional thing. You pop out the physical SIM and you pop in another SIM from the carrier of your choice and you're good to go. iPhones are very plug and play. Now, the process of activating your eSIM is actually very straightforward, but a lot of people are having issues with their carriers getting their eSIMs activated. Okay? So this is why I would recommend the international variants of the iPhone 14s over the US ones. Okay? But that's one thing in terms of carrier and coverage that I wanted to point out. But let's keep it moving now. Now, as we run through this next part, y'all are going to see a bunch of similarities, and I'm only going to try and point out some of the differences. Now, in terms of the displays and the bodies, it's a full aluminum and glass body for all the devices. Full aluminum midframe, glass on the front and the back. And in terms of the displays, in terms of the smaller iPhones, they all have 6.1-inch displays. Okay? The key difference when we talk about the displays, comparing them to the iPhone 11, is the resolution. Even though Apple has always had kind of funny resolutions, and the nits and peak nits or peak brightness that your device can achieve. Alright, so again, all of these devices, iPhone 11, iPhone 14, iPhone 14 Pro, 6.1 inches in terms of the displays. Okay, in terms of the resolutions, y'all can see the differences there. In terms of the nits, and this is a big difference, okay? The 11 has a peak brightness of 625 nits, whereas the 14 has a physical brightness peak of 800 nits, but if you leave on auto brightness, that gives it the potential to have a physical auto brightness peak nittage of 1200 nits. So you're definitely going to be able to use the iPhone 14 outdoors, no problem, okay? And if you go with the 14 Pro, it goes up to a peak nits or peak brightness with auto brightness turned on of 2000 nits, okay? So those are the differences there. Now, I can be honest with y'all, I don't think 625 nits for the iPhone 11 is bad. Shouldn't have any problems there, okay? And being as I've been using my iPhone 11 for a good amount of time now, I can tell y'all, using it in direct sunlight outdoors, no issues in terms of that peak nits brightness level of 625 nits. But if you wanted to know the differences, there you have it. Now, Apple did introduce some new key features this year with their 14 Pros and the Pro Max, okay? In particular, with the Pro and the Pro Max, they did implement always on display, and they do have a punch hole or a cutout on their display with really nicely integrated software to go alongside it, which they're calling their dynamic island. Okay, that's just for the 14 Pro and the Pro Max. If you go with the 14 or the 14 Plus, you're not getting that new punch out. You're not getting that integrated software. Okay, just wanted to point that out. Now, in terms of the chip and the software itself, all of these devices, regardless of which one you go with, have flagship chips in them. And in terms of the overall performance, it's going to be fluid and phenomenal regardless of whichever device you decide to go with. So you shouldn't be discouraged that the iPhone 11 has an A13 Bionic. Again, it's the baseline performance level that Apple used. Just like you shouldn't be discouraged that the 14 or the 16, they don't have the exact same chip in them, okay? The 14 is using last year's A15, and you only really get that upgraded chip if you go with the Pro this year, so you only really get that A16 if you go with the Pro. But in all honesty, Apple devices since the iPhone 10 and upwards have been fluid and performed phenomenal, so you really shouldn't care about the onboard chip. The performance itself is going to be fluid no matter what. Okay? Now, moving on, let's talk about RAM and storage. Again, this is important because iPhones don't have expandable storage. Okay? So with the 11, we have 4 gigs of RAM across the board, and then with the 14s, we have 6 gigs of RAM. Okay, and you can see with the 11, we maxing out at 256 gigs of onboard storage. With the 14, we're maxing out at 512, and only on the Pro models this year will you get that 1 terabyte option. Okay, and I always recommend with iPhones that you get the highest storage variant that you can afford. If you can only afford the baseline model, that means you have to get comfortable with managing your storage. Okay? But get the storage level that you can afford because there's no expandable storage. But that's the differences in RAM and storage. So again, if you go with the iPhone 11, which is not bad in terms of performance, you only get 4 gigs of RAM and you're maxing out at 256 gigs of onboard storage. If you decide to go with the 14s, you can only go as high as 512, even though you do start with a nice base of 128. But if you want the big Mac Daddy, you want the maxed out variant, you want that 1 terabyte, then you gotta go with the Pro. Okay? All right. Now, moving on to the cameras and the differences. The iPhone 11, the iPhone 14, the iPhone 14 Plus, all pretty much have the same basic cameras on them, okay? Dual cameras on the rear, one primary, one ultra wide, and one really good front-facing camera on the front. That's 12 megapixels. Now, the difference is that with previous iPhones, we did not get autofocus with the front-facing camera, and we do have some additional software features that Apple integrated this year, okay? That you're only going to get if you have last year's 13 or 13 Pro or 13 Pro Max, or this year's 14 series or 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max, okay? But the big difference between the 11 and the 14 is we have autofocus for the front-facing camera on the 14. We don't have it on the 11, okay? Is it a big deal? I don't think so, but if you want your photos and videos to always be in focus, then having autofocus, whether it be on the back or the front, is a big deal, okay? But the next big difference we have, and this is only pertaining to the 14 and the Pros, is that the Pros have a new upgraded 48 megapixel camera main sensor this year, okay? You're only getting that main sensor upgrade if you go with the Pro or the Pro Max for this year, okay? If you go with the 14 or the 14 Plus, you're still stuck with the 12 megapixel cameras across the board. All right? Just wanted to point that out. Now, all of these cameras, regardless of which device you go with, can record 4K 60 on either the front or the rear. So no issues there. They all have their slow motion. No problems there. Okay? All have really good stabilization. No issues there as well. Now, with the newer 14s and the 14 Pros, they have the super steady mode this year. Okay? Super steady action camera style mode. And I gotta say, based on the content that I have seen so far, it does look really, really good. Now, it only works really good in really well lit scenarios, but it is super steady and the footage looks great. Okay? So that's the differences there in terms of the cameras. In terms of the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi is all fairly similar stuff. They all have stereo speaker setups. One front-facing speaker in the receiver grill, one bottom-firing speaker next to the mic. Okay? Now, the next big difference has to do with Bluetooth. Okay? They all have the latest and greatest Wi-Fi coverage, so that's not an issue there. But in terms of Bluetooth, if you go with your 11, you got Bluetooth 5.0. If you go with your 14 or your 14 Pros, you got the latest Bluetooth 5.3. Okay? Honestly, Bluetooth 5.0 works flawlessly, so it's not really a big deal for me having the older Bluetooth. Okay? It's not broke. It works flawlessly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Alright? Now, moving on here, I am very sad to see this next part. Although Apple has been doing the USB Type-C to Lightning connectors for a few years now, they refuse to upgrade to just USB Type-C on everything. Okay, so it really should not be a USB Type-C to Lightning connector. It should be a USB Type-C to USB Type-C connector, especially if you're going to be recording footage or taking photos with the Pros at maximum resolution. That Lightning connector is going to be a very serious performance bottleneck trying to get your footage or photos off the device, especially if you shoot in Pro RAW. So you're taking full advantage of all the data capabilities that are coming out of the camera. That Lightning connector is going to be a serious performance bottleneck. I really want Apple to just upgrade to USB Type-C everything across the board like they've done on their MacBooks and like they've done on their iPads. Why are they holding out on the iPhone so tightly? Why y'all holding out so tightly, Apple, man? Loosen it up. Man. But it's still Lightning, and in particular, Lightning with USB 2.0 in terms of the data speeds. So that is a very severe bottleneck right there. Okay? So, again, it really makes no difference from that aspect whether you go with an 11, a 14, or a 14 Pro, or a Pro Max, because they all have the same connectors with the same speeds. Okay? Now, moving on, y'all know Apple hasn't had physical fingerprint sensors for years now. All the devices this year have Face ID, really good Face ID, really refined Face ID, and it works flawlessly. Face ID has been working flawlessly since the iPhone 10. No issues there. Okay? Now, moving on, let's talk about some major differences here in terms of the battery. Now, the iPhone 11, which has really good battery, it's been downgraded from top-notch or phenomenal because the latest iOS 16 update, it kind of killed my battery a little bit, but it's still really good battery. But the next difference here is in terms of the battery sizes, right? And this was pretty funny. So the iPhone 11 has a 3110 milliamp hour battery, but if you look, the iPhone 14 has a 3279 milliamp hour battery versus the iPhone 14 Pro 3200 milliamp hour battery. Why is it that the non-Pro has the slightly bigger battery? Now, all of these devices have wireless charging, okay? But the newer devices do have that MagSafe, all right? So if you want to take advantage of the MagSafe accessories, you need to be looking at least an iPhone 12 and upwards, okay? But I thought that was kind of awkward that the 14 has a bigger battery than the 14 Pro. And here is another big difference that I want to point out for y'all as I showcase the colors there. Okay, just wanted to show y'all the colors. Let me do it one more time. Boom. And let's scroll back up to the top. But here is another big difference. And shout out to all the teardown channels that pointed this out. But new this year, Apple has decided to redesign their 14, okay, and their 14 Plus. So they make it easier to repair the back and the front glass on your 14 and your 14 Plus. And it's less expensive too, right? But the 14 Pro and the Pro Max still have that tightly integrated, really hard to repair design. Meaning that if you do break your 14 Pro or your 14 Pro Max, it's going to be just as expensive as buying a new device. So sometimes you may just be like, screw it, we're just going to buy a new device. Whereas with your 14 or your 14 Plus, if you drop your device and the screen breaks or the back glass breaks, no big deal. It's going to be really easy to repair. It shouldn't be as expensive. Now, Apple has come a long way in terms of repairability. They do have their user right to repair, where you can get parts to repair your devices directly from Apple, okay, and do the repairs yourself. Or you can go to an Apple certified repair shop and they will do the repair, and then they can code up the hardware with the software. That's very important because Apple is still hard coding all of their physical software with the software components on their device. So if you go and you break your device and you get it repaired from a non-certified shop, you're gonna get it fixed, but you're gonna lose features like True Tone, you're gonna lose features like Night Shift, and you may or may not get some other lost features and warnings as well, especially if you do something like a battery swap. It's going to tell you don't have genuine Apple parts. So I really wish Apple would stop doing that. And they say it's for security, but I don't really think so. Just like how they said the movement to eSIM was for security, I don't really think so. But that's another big difference in particular between your 11, your 14, your 14 Plus, and your 14 Pro and Pro Max. The repairability in terms of device repairability is a lot better on the 14 and the 14 Plus. Okay? Alright. So that goes over the comparison for the 11, the 14, and the 14 Pro. Let's talk pricing now. So y'all can see you can actually get your 11 for around $400. You can actually get it a lot cheaper than that. But $400, that's a great price. That's a really phenomenal price, especially when you compare it to the prices that I'm going to show y'all here. So let's go to Apple directly. And you can see for the 14, it's starting at $800. Okay? $79.99.99. Make it easy, round it up to 800. Or you can do 24 monthly payments of $33.29. Okay? Now, your payments do adjust depending on color. You can see all the colors there. So we got blue, okay? We got blue, we got purple, we got black, we got like a light gold, and we got a product red. Product red does go towards COVID research and relief. So that's good stuff there. Previous product reds used to go towards cancer, AIDS relief and research. But now it's shifted to COVID. So yeah, good stuff there. But that's the colors. And now let's talk storage differences. So the base model for the 14s start with 128 and they go upwards from there. So you can see 128 is going to be $800. And if you want the maxed out variant, it's going to be $1,100 or $45.79 a month for 24 months. Okay, that's for your standard 14. Now, let's switch it up. Let's go to the 14 Plus. So we're going from 6.1 to 6.7. Okay? And you can see your 14 Plus starts at $900. So there's a difference of $100 in terms of the baseline. Okay? $900 for your 14 Plus or $37.45 for 24 months. And this is coming directly from Apple. We're on Apple's site. Okay? And that does not include trade-ins. Your pricing may vary depending on what device you have to trade in. So you can get it at a potentially cheaper price as well. Okay? But same colors. And now let's look at the storage. So $900 for the base, $1,000 for the middle, or $1,200 for the max. Okay? Or $49.45 for 24 months. Okay? Like I said earlier, you're only going to have that terabyte option when you go up to the Pro variants. Okay? But that goes over the pricing for the 14 and the 14 Plus. Now, let's talk about the Pro Max. Okay, so let's jump over here. And you can see pretty much the Plus is kind of like a hybrid between the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max, just at a little bit of a cheaper price. So you can see the 13 Pro Max is the same size as the 14 Plus and the same size as the 14 Pro Max. Okay? You just get one additional sensor on your Pro Maxes that you don't get on your 14 Plus. And we already went over the pricing there. Okay? And oddly enough, Apple has taken out the 13 Pro and the 13 Pro Max from their website, so you can only officially get that from third-party sellers now. Smart move, Apple. Smart move there. Because why would someone get the latest and greatest if you still had the previous models up on the site? Everyone would say, well, I'm going to just save money. They're going to perform basically the same anyway. I'm losing out on a few new features, but it's not a big deal. I'm going to just get the 13 Pro or the 13 Pro Max, save a couple $100 and be happy. Okay? But Apple took that down. So you can't buy the 13 Pro or the Pro Max directly from Apple anymore. You got to go with third-party resellers now. So if you go with Apple directly, you can only go as low as the new SEs and up, but you don't have access to the 13 Pro or the Pro Max. Let me just show you here real quickly. Okay, so if we go up and you go to iPhones, you can see it's gonna load up here, and you can see we can go as far down as the iPhone 12 and the new SEs. If we click on 13, we only have the regular 13 and the 13 mini. Okay, and y'all can see the pricing there. We don't have access to the 13 Pro or the 13 Pro Max anymore. Okay, let me put this back. I just wanted to show y'all that. So let me put this back on the 14. Okay, but let's jump back over to the specs comparison between these, and it is like deadly similar. Okay, so I would recommend here that you either go with the 14 Plus, or you just go with a 13 Pro Max. Save a little bit of money. The performance is just as good. Sure, you're losing out on the new 48 megapixel sensor and the telephoto sensor, but it's not a big deal. It's really not. And Apple is having some issues with their new 48 megapixel sensors. They're releasing some updates to try and iron it out, but they are having issues, and it is a new hardware tech for them, so they are going to have some growing pains, just like they're having some growing pains with iOS 16. No company is perfect, regardless of how they want to paint themselves and really push their image. No company is perfect, but let's keep it pushing. So in terms of the displays, same display sizes. Again, the only differences here, there really aren't that many differences here. And in terms of carrier, the 13 Pro and Pro Max do have 5G support, so it is similar across the board. And just in case y'all didn't know, iPhones have had eSIM support since the iPhone 10. So there's been an embedded eSIM on the motherboard of your iPhone since the iPhone 10. Okay, so you can just, again, save some money, get your physical SIM along with your eSIM by going with the 13 Pro or the 13 Pro Max. Sure, you have to get them through third-party retailers now. You can't get it from Apple directly, but if you want a newer iPhone, just go with the 14 Plus. Especially if display size is a big thing for you, you're gonna enjoy the 14 Plus. Now, some of y'all may say, but if I go with the 14 Plus, I lose out on the high refresh rate. I don't get the dynamic island. Okay, as someone who can't really tell the difference between high refresh rate, it's not a big deal. And it's actually a bigger power draw having a higher refresh rate display. Okay? And y'all will see a little bit later the fact that the iPhone 14 Plus doesn't have a higher refresh rate but has a bigger battery. It should have phenomenal overall battery life, especially comparing it to the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. And a lot of my friends that have the 14 Pro Max is saying there's definitely a big hit to battery life, or it's definitely noticeable. you're not going to have that issue with the 14 Plus. But here's what the band support looks like. It's pretty much going to be flawless regardless of whatever carrier you have. Just be mindful of Verizon. You need a Verizon specific device for that. Okay? Now, moving on to the bodies, it's pretty much the same body. So same waterproofing, same dual SIM and eSIM support across the board. Again, if you go with the newer 14s, you only have a physical SIM with the international models. If you get the stateside models, it's all eSIM. Okay? Same software. Again, same flagship chips. No issues there. Same RAM, same storage. Again, if you go with the Plus, you don't have a terabyte option. Okay, and we already talked about the camera differences. Okay, so we can just scroll on down to battery. And here is the difference that I wanted to point out. Now, all of these devices, 13 Pro, 13 Pro Max, 14 Plus, 14 Pro Max, all have MagSafe, all have wireless charging, all the goodies. But look at the battery difference here. And the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max already have phenomenal battery. But look at this. Look at this. 4352 for the 13. Okay. 4324 for the Plus. And 4323 for the Pro Max. So the Plus and the Pro Max basically have the same battery size in terms of the newer 14s. But as I said earlier, the fact that the Plus does not have high refresh rate and it does not have the always on display technology or the dynamic island software means you're going to get ridiculously phenomenal battery life with your 14 Plus. And it's going to be head and shoulders better than the 14 Pro Max. Okay? It's going to be right on par with the 13 Pro and the 13 Pro Max. Okay? So yes, you're losing out on some features, but it's not a big deal. And you're getting overall a really solid device, and you are saving some money at the end of the day. Okay? So in my opinion, let me show y'all the pricing from Apple before we get into that first. Let me slide this over here. So going to Apple directly, you can see your 14 Pro starts at $1,000 or $41.62 a month for 24 months, or your Pro Max starts at $1,100 or $45.79 a month for 24 months. And you can see starting with the Pro, so let's click it here, and we got to pick a color, so let's go with the black. Here's your storage options and pricing. So it starts at $1,000 and it goes all the way up to $1,500 or $62.45 a month for 24 months. Keep in mind the pricing that I'm showing everyone does not include taxes. You still will have to pay taxes depending on your region and area. And let me apologize to my European folks, because the prices that y'all have to pay this year are just sad. So I want to personally apologize. You really shouldn't have to pay that much for a new device, but it is what it is. Okay? So that's the 14 Pros. So we're maxing out at $1,500, not including the taxes. Okay? And that's for your terabyte. Now, going up to the 14 Pro Max, starting at $1,100. Colors, here's your colors. Let's click the black. Boom. And here's your options. So, $1,100 to start, all the way through $1,600. So that's $1,100 or $45.79 for 24 months, or $1,600 or $66.62 for 24 months. Keep in mind, that does not include taxes, and this is directly from Apple. And again, your prices may vary depending on trade-in values. Okay? All right. Okay? Okay. All right, so that's the pricing for the 14 and the Pro Max. Now, let me get into my opinions and my recommendations. Let me scroll up here. Okay? Honestly, based on what you can afford, honestly, scratch the 14 Pro Max out of there. Okay? If you want that newer tech and you want to keep the bigger display, have at it. It's your money. You spend it how you want. But I'm going to recommend you go with the 14 Plus, or you go with the 13 Pros, or you just go with the iPhone 11. Save yourself some money. You're still going to have phenomenal performance across the board, and you're still going to have software support for at least 5 to 7 years. Okay? Apple has always been phenomenal with their software support. So, yeah. In terms of my recommendations, go with your 13 Pro or Pro Maxes. Go with your iPhone 11 or your iPhone 14 Plus. Okay? I honestly would not recommend the 14 Pro Max or the 14 Pro. Nah. It's not really worth it. Now, depending on the deal that you get, it might be worth it to you. Depending on the monthly pricing that you get, it might be worth it to you. But that's my overall recommendation. Okay? Alright, that pretty much does it for this video here today, guys and gals. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. I hope you guys and gals found it helpful. If you did find it helpful, y'all know what to do. And remember, if your interest is piqued, all the links will be available down below in the video description. So as always, the video description will be like a one-stop shop for you guys and gals, and you should be good to go. Okay? Okay. Alright. And last but certainly not least, what do y'all think about the new 14s this year? What do you think about the new 14 Pro and Pro Max? How do you think it stacks up? Which device would you recommend? Let's get into a nice, respectful conversation down below in the comments. As always, keep it respectful, please. And I will meet you guys and gals down there. And oh yes, I know I didn't forget. If you noticed, I didn't talk about the other new features, the crash detection and the satellite tracking. Those were the other new features that Apple introduced this year. Basically, those are safety features. Good to have. You just pray that you would never have to use it. Now, shout out to some YouTube content creators because they have tested that stuff. I'll link up the channels down below. It does work, but based on what I'm seeing, it's really good features that you would love to have, but you pray you would never want to use. So they're there. I just didn't feel the need to actually talk about them, but it's still an overall really good feature. But that does it for this one. As I said earlier, I'm getting a little repetitive at this point. Hope you guys and gals enjoyed the video. Hope you found it helpful. Hope everyone is having a great day. Hope you guys and gals are staying safe out there. And I will catch everyone in the next one. We are out of here. Have a good one, everybody. Peace. And I gotta say, man, my Samsung Galaxy Tab S6 with the new Android 12L update is running phenomenally. That new One UI 4.1.1, yes, Samsung, this is the way you do a big screen display in terms of software and integration. Good job, Samsung there. Had to throw out some more love. But we are out of here. Have a good one, everybody. Peace.